Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. We are diving into renewable energy today, but not just like the simple stuff, like, how solar panels work or whatever. We're going deeper.
Much deeper, yes.
Thinking about the ethics of it all, like the moral side of things, we're going to be, tackling those tough questions that come up, like, do we owe something to future generations? A climate debt. And can clean energy really be ethical? I mean, where do these materials come from? And even if we switch to all renewables but don't change how much we're actually using, is it really sustainable?
Yeah, all really important questions. And kind of urgent, too, right? We have to get away from fossil fuels, but science is so clear on that.
Totally.
But yeah, this idea of a climate debt, it's huge, right? Like those who, benefited most from fossil fuels, often, wealthier nations, yeah, well, they have a bigger responsibility, not only to transition themselves, but to help others do it, too.
Kind of like if you made a mess, you got to help clean it up.
Exactly. And it all ties in with energy equity, too. I mean, think about it. Over 700 million people, they don't even have electricity, like at all.
It's hard to even imagine.
Renewables could change that. I really think so. But it's not as simple as just like sticking solar panels everywhere. You know what I mean?
Right, because even renewables, they're not a perfect solution, are they? I mean, that's what really fascinated me in your research. Like, we kind of think of renewable energy as this totally good thing, but there are these trade-offs. What are some of the things that stood out to you?
Land use is a big one. Like to do solar and wind on a big scale, yeah, it takes up space. I mean, a lot of space. And even though it's way less impactful than, taking up fossil fuels, still, we got to think about ecosystems, wildlife. I mean, even sometimes displacing people.
Like what happened with those huge jams, right?
Exactly. Hydropower, yeah, it's renewable, but think about all those valleys that got flooded. People had to move. It's complicated.
So it's not as simple as just flipping a switch.
No, definitely not. We have to think about the specifics, the local impacts. We don't want to solve one problem, and create a whole bunch of new ones.
And it's not just about the space those farms take up, right? What about all the materials that go into this stuff, like, lithium and all those rare earth metals? Where's all that coming from?
That's a huge issue. Mining those resources, it comes with a lot of baggage, ethically. I mean, you think about labor exploitation, environmental damage. It can even, like, reinforce those colonial patterns of extracting resources, taking from one place to benefit another. So it makes you wonder, are we really doing any good? Or are we just swapping one form of exploitation for another?
So even when we're trying to do something good, like switching to clean energy, we still bump up against these really complex questions of like fairness and responsibility.
Absolutely.
And you know what? It almost feels like the technology itself, it's forcing us to rethink what progress really means.
Yeah, and that's something philosophers have been grappling with for ages. Like, you think about a guy like Aldo Leopold. He had this idea of a land ethic.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So he was basically saying, humans, we shouldn't see ourselves as the bosses of nature. Like, we're not in charge. We're just part of it, one part of a big community. So when it comes to renewable energy, that means thinking about the long-term health of ecosystems, not just how much energy we can squeeze out of them.
So it's not enough to just get clean energy. We have to get it in a way that doesn't mess up the whole natural world, right?
Exactly. Before we slap solar panels everywhere, we got to ask, is this going to mess things up? Another thinker who had some really interesting things to see about all this is Ivan Illich. He was pretty critical of how obsessed we are with, using more and more energy.
Like he thought maybe more energy doesn't always equal a better life.
Exactly. Like our whole idea of progress, of always wanting more, 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 maybe that's part of the problem. So it makes you think, does renewable energy, does it need to come with like a totally different way of thinking about progress? Maybe even embracing this idea of degrowth.
Degrowth? What's that?
Basically the idea that maybe, just maybe, we should be trying to use less overall. Even if it's clean energy, maybe we just need less of it. So the question is, do we really need all this energy? Could we actually live better lives with less?
That's a pretty big shift from how we usually think.
It is, and it kind of connects to what Hans Jonas, another philosopher, called technological complacency. He was worried that we'd become too reliant on technology to fix our problems. Like we'll just invent our way out of anything. But the problem is that can make us lazy. We don't actually change our behavior.
So switching to renewables, maybe that's not enough if we just keep using all that clean energy to do all the same unsustainable stuff.
Right? We need to be willing to look at our own habits, how much we're using, how we're living.
And it's not just about individuals either, right? We got to think about the big picture, the global systems that control how this energy is made and used. Yeah, because the shift to renewables isn't happening in some little bubble. It's happening all over the world differently in different places. And that brings up some big questions about fairness, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And one of the biggest concerns is this idea of green colonialism. Basically, it's when richer countries, they kind of outsource their renewable energy needs to developing countries. But sometimes they don't really think about the local impacts or make sure those communities actually benefit.
So it's like rich countries get to feel good about having clean energy, but someone else is dealing with the downsides.
That's the worry. A really clear example of this is happening with wind farms in North Africa. Like, they're exporting energy to Europe, but some people living right there, they still don't have basic electricity. It really shows how even this good intentions, this transition to renewables, it could end up making things even more unequal.
This is what I find so fascinating and honestly a little scary about this whole topic. We're talking about solutions to like the biggest problem we face, climate change, but it's not as easy as just plugging in a new technology. There are so many layers, so many ethical questions we got to think about.
You're right, it's not simple at all. Moving to renewables, it's as much about social justice and global equity as it is about cutting emissions. And it's about making sure everyone benefits and we're not just repeating the same mistakes we made before. And that leads us to this really crucial idea, a just transition.
I've heard that term, but honestly, I'm not totally clear on what it means. Can you explain it?
Of course. So a just transition, it starts by acknowledging that shifting away from fossil fuels, it's going to displace workers. People are going to lose jobs. So it's about making sure those people aren't left behind, that they have ways to retrain, to get new jobs, to participate in this new green economy.
So it's not enough to just transition to clean energy. We got to do it in a way that's fair to everyone, especially the people who might get hurt the most.
Exactly. And this idea of fairness, it goes beyond just one country, too. There's a growing movement for what they call climate reparations. The idea is that the countries that polluted the most in the past, they have a moral duty to help fund renewable energy in those places that are being hit hardest by climate change.
Like, it's recognizing that we're all of this together, and those who benefited the most from polluting, well, they got to help those who are suffering because of it.
Right. Philosopher Henry Shue, he argues that this is about justice, not charity.
It's really amazing how this conversation has gone from renewable energy to these deep questions about like global justice, historical responsibility, and what it means to live in a fair world.
Yeah, it really shows how interconnected all these issues are. This change to renewables, it's not just a technological thing, it's a total societal transformation. We got to rethink our values, our priorities, our whole idea of what progress is.
So where do we go from here? With all this complexity, what can any of us do to make a difference? It's easy to feel overwhelmed, like, do my choices even matter?
That's a great question, and we'll pick it up in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore how individual actions and these bigger systemic changes, how they can work together to make a more sustainable future.
I'm looking forward to that conversation. But for now, let's give everyone some time to process all of this. Think about what stood out to you. What are your initial reactions to all these ethical considerations? We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive and explore those questions together. Welcome back to our deep dive on the ethics of renewable energy.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride so far, huh?
It really has. We started with climate debt, and then we got into all the stuff about land use, resource extraction, even some philosophy.
And honestly, we've just barely scratched the surface.
I know, but what's really hitting me is how this whole conversation, it's gone way beyond like the technical stuff, watts and volts. We're talking about morals and values now. It's almost like the tech itself is forcing us to think about what it even means to be human these days.
You're totally right. It's easy to get stuck on the technical side of renewables, but we can't forget the human element, right? Like, how do we balance what we need and want with, what's good for the planet? And what about future generations? That's like the big ethical dilemma, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think as we switch to cleaner energy, we have this amazing chance to like totally redefine our relationship with energy itself. Instead of just seeing it as something we use up, we can start to see it as this precious resource, something that connects us to nature, to each other.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. Going beyond just, how much energy we can get, we got to start asking, how can we use it responsibly? How can we create a just and sustainable world with it?
Which brings us back to this question of like individual actions versus systemic change. It's something I struggle with a lot. Like, I try to make good choices, for the environment, but then I see these giant companies doing whatever they want, and it just feels like, what's the point? Like, my little actions don't even matter.
Yeah, I get that. It's a really common feeling. But you got to remember, even small actions, they can make a difference. Like, think of it as a ripple effect. You inspire other people, you create demand for more sustainable products, and eventually, yeah, it can even influence those big companies and the government too.
So, like, even just riding my bike to work or choosing a plant-based meal, those things can actually contribute to a bigger change.
They took again, because it all starts with changing how we think, right? And when enough people start demanding clean energy, ethical businesses, and policies that actually care about the planet, then those in power, they got to start paying attention.
So it's like building a movement one person at a time.
That's it. It's not about individual actions or systemic change. It's both. They work together. And that's why I think this deep dive is so important. The more we learn about the better choices we can make and the more we can push for the better world.
I like that. Knowledge is power. And the more we understand the ethical side of things, the more we can, make sure this transition to clean energy actually benefits everyone.
That's it. We can spot greenwashing. We can be more aware of those unintended consequences. We can fight for a transition that's just and fair.
So it's about being involved, not just sitting back and watching it happen.
Exactly. Asking tough questions, challenging things, using our voices to make a difference.
Speaking of the future, can we go back to that question about, what would a truly just and sustainable energy system look like?
Oh, yeah. That's a fun one. Okay, imagine we have a clean slate, right? Like we're starting from scratch.
What would we build?
Well, I think the foundation would have to be this idea that energy is a common good. It's not something to buy and sell for profit, but something that belongs to all of us, and we manage it in a way that benefits everybody.
So instead of energy companies making tons of money, we'd be focused on making sure everyone has access to affordable, reliable energy, no matter where they live or how much money they have.
Exactly. And that probably means moving away from like these huge power plants and towards systems that are more local, community-based.
And I bet energy efficiency and conservation, that would be a big deal in this system, right? Like using less overall so we don't need to build as many power plants in the first place.
Definitely. We'd also focus on renewable technologies that aren't just good for the environment, but also socially just, like thinking about the whole life cycle from mining to waste disposal and making sure those fossil fuel workers, they have good jobs in this new system.
So it's about way more than just switching to solar and wind. It's like a whole new way of thinking about energy, how it fits into our lives, how we make it and use it.
You got it. It's a total shift in values and priorities.
It sounds pretty challenging, honestly. Like it would take a lot of cooperation and, well, political will.
It would be a ways undertaking for sure. But, we're not starting from nothing. There are already so many people working on this all over the world. Grassroots activists, scientists, policymakers. There's this growing movement, and it's getting stronger every day.
So there's hope. Like, even with all the challenges, we can actually do this.
I really believe we can. We have the knowledge, the tech, and more people are waking up to this issue. But yeah, it's going to take all of us working together.
Which leads to a really important question. What can each of us do? How do we move beyond feeling overwhelmed and actually take action? Welcome back to the deep dive. We've gone pretty deep already, haven't we? From the science of climate change to the philosophy of how we even think about energy.
Yeah, and all those ethical dilemmas, right? Those hidden costs, those unexpected things that pop up, even when we're talking about something that seems like a good solution, like renewables.
Exactly. It's been a lot to take in, but now I'm wondering, okay, what do we do with all this? How do we go from just knowing stuff to actually, making a difference?
That's the big question, right? And I think it helps to remember action. It could be a lot of different things. It's not just those big sweeping changes. Individual choices matter. What we do in our communities matters. Even just, what we buy, it all sends a message.
So even if I'm not a politician or a CEO, I can still do something.
For sure. Think about it. Every time you walk instead of drive, every time you buy something from a company that's, trying to do good, you're voting with your dollars. And those votes add up.
That's good to hear, but I also know that the big systems have to change too, right? It's not enough to just recycle our way out of this.
No, you're right. Individual actions are important, but we also need changes in policy, regulations, how businesses operate, and yeah, that can feel really overwhelming. Like how can one person even, influence those big systems?
Yeah, it feels like David and Goliath sometimes.
I get it. But remember, David, he actually won in the end. And if you look back in history, there are tons of examples of these small local movements that became huge. Think about civil rights, women's suffrage, even banning plastic straws.
You're right. Those all started with just people speaking up, raising awareness, saying we deserve better.
Exactly. And all those voices, when they join together, they become this force that can't be ignored. So don't underestimate what you can do, your choices, how you can influence others, even if it seems small.
That's encouraging. It means we're not just stuck watching this happen. We can actually do something about it.
We're all participants in this, and one of the best things you can do is support those organizations that are already doing great work. There are so many groups fighting for environmental justice, promoting renewables, making sure this transition is fair for everyone.
So, like, do some research, find those groups, donate if I can, volunteer, spread the word.
Exactly. And don't forget about voting. Pay attention to who's running, what they stand for, what policies they support. Use your vote to back those who are serious about a just and sustainable energy future.
It always comes back to being informed, doesn't it? The more we know, the better choices we can make.
100%. And honestly, that's probably the most important takeaway from our whole deep dive. Knowledge is power. The more we understand about these issues, the more we can do to make things better.
So, for our listeners out there, what's the one thing you hope they take away from all of this?
Don't be afraid to dive deep. Keep learning, keep asking those hard questions, keep pushing for better. This energy transition, it's not just about tech. It's about rethinking our relationship with energy, with each other, with the planet. And to do that right, we all need to be involved, informed, and active.
Well said. And thanks to everyone for joining us for this deep dive into renewable energy. We've covered a lot, the science, the technology, the economics, but most importantly, the ethical stuff that's so easy to miss.
It's been great to explore all these complex issues with you. And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.